I'm Tom Wynandy, and I live in Jackson, Michigan. I've always wondered about Michigan's bottle deposit system. Are the costs actually worth the benefits of increased recycling, given that it takes people extra time to submit the bottle deposits? So, as an economist, I have been trained in the art of trade-offs. The idea that there are no single solutions to anything. There is just something that's better or worse.
The Michigan bottle deposit is, one could argue, legendary. We were the first state to institute the dime deposit, and we are still one of the only states at that 10-cent rate. I mean, imagine it. A whole dime for an empty can? And if you're willing to collect other people's empties at the tailgate or in dumpsters, well, that's just money in the bank. Kramer had that figured out in an episode of Seinfeld that dedicates a whole plot line to Michigan's bottle deposit.
What is this MI 10 cents?
That's Michigan. In Michigan, you get 10 cents.
10 cents?
Yeah.
Wait a minute, you mean you get 5 cents here and 10 cents there? You could round up bottles here and run them out to Michigan for the difference.
That doesn't work.
What do you mean it doesn't work? You get enough bottles together.
Yeah, you overload your inventory and you blow your margins on gasoline. Trust me, it doesn't work. Now, you're not talking that Michigan deposit bottle.
But 30 years later, with all the inflation, does it still pay to return cans and bottles? And what about all the work that happens after you send your can into the black hole of the reverse vending machine? Is all the labor of processing and melting and recreating a can, as Tom says, worth it? This is On Hand, a podcast about all the things that make Michigan unique. I'm April Baer. Today, is it worth it for our state to have this whole program just for recycling bottles? And is it worth my time to haul our bottles to the store just for 10 cents? On Hand producer Ronia Kapansag has been sorting through the cans and bottles for this one. Ronia, hi.
Hi, April.
Why do we even have a bottle bill? Who was it who decided that we should pay this 10-cent deposit on our drinks?
So Michigan's bottle bill was approved by voters in 1976 as something called the Beverage Container Act. And in the years before that, honestly, people were just being jerks about their trash. You know, you'd find bottles on the beach and along the highway, in parks, everywhere they shouldn't be, right? So this bottle bill was created to incentivize proper disposal. And as of 2004, I found out doing this story, it's actually illegal to throw your redeemables in the trash can.
Wait, what?
Yes, I didn't know this, and I've lived here my whole life, but we are legally required to recycle our returnables. So take your returnables back, or at least put them in the curbside bin.
I learn something new on this podcast every time,
Me
but
too.
that one is a total bomb drop on me.
Yeah. And one more aspect of the bottle return laws, all retailers are legally required to accept returnable cans and bottles that they sell. So if you buy energy drinks, for example, at like the gas station on your corner, you could collect all those cans and bring them back to that gas station.
How exactly does the 10-cent deposit work? I mean, I know I'm paying it when I pay for a beverage, but where does it go?
Yeah, great question. So the deposit only applies to containers for certain alcoholic and carbonated drinks. So no regular water bottles, no juice containers, no straight wine, no hard liquor. And actually, it's not just you that gets this 10 cents for the can that you return. Retailers also get their 10-cent deposit back from the wholesaler. So there's this whole loop where the 10-cent cost gets passed down from the retailer to the consumer. It's confusing, but essentially, if everyone does their part, everyone gets their 10 cents back. But if any deposits don't get claimed, all those dimes actually go back to the state to get redistributed. And some of that money goes towards environmental cleanup, and some of it goes back to retailers as compensation for collecting our empty bottles. But that creates this tricky system, right, where retailers only get more financial support for recycling when we recycle less. So some retailers might say, yeah, this system isn't worth it, or at least should be updated.
Okay, so I think I understand the life cycle of the 10 cents, the deposit. Mm-hmm. What about the actual life cycles of the bottle?
I was curious about this too. So I took a bunch of my returnables to a local Meijer, and I fed them into the machine where they start the journey. There it goes. You put your returnables, as you said, into the mysterious black hole, and there's a scanner in there you've probably seen before that reads the labels and determines what company produced it. And it also determines whether it's plastic, glass, or aluminum. and it'll crush the bottle and sort it in the back of the machine by materials into these big black plastic bins.
Wow, technology.
My payout is $1.20. Ooh. And then I drove to this sorting facility in Wixom where the crushed bottles go next.
We're going to get out to the plant floor where just be mindful, obviously we have high vis, there would be forklifts, and obviously they'll see us coming, so.
Honestly, it already smells a little like beer in here.
Every day.
That's Nick Kronsbein. He's the president of the business unit for a company called Schupan and Sons. And he walked us up to this viewing platform where you can see what felt to me like organized chaos. Like there are conveyor belts and robot arms, and it smells like beer, and there are those big black plastic bins of crushed bottles and cans.
We're picking up all these containers that the distributors pay us for, and they own the material, and there's a lot of accountability of making sure that when something goes through a reverse vending machine, that it cannot be double redeemed and that we get it back at this facility. So there's no containers that are missing. And one of those things is we know each bin, which store it came from. Sorry, the glass dumping's loud.
It was super loud in there. We had these headphones on because the sound was really intense. But those containers he's talking about are those same plastic bins your bottle got sorted into at the Meijer, at the store, whatever store you go to. And this facility, Schupan, picks up those bins full of material and sorts them even further. So glass gets sorted by color, loose plastic bottle caps are captured and ground, and aluminum gets shredded or rolled up into these huge bales.
So these will go right to an aluminum mill. They'll take that and roll that into can sheet once it's melted down, and then one 30,000 brick can make 2 million cans. So that's a very, very large operation. So.
And just like the aluminum, all these other sorted materials will go to other processing companies. Each material is pretty different, so plastic, glass, aluminum, but essentially they'll all get melted down in some way and recycled into something new.
That's very cool, but I mean, it sounds like a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, but what I keep hearing is that that's kind of the magic behind the return system. Yes, there's more work. It's a whole separate system from your curbside bin system, but what you get is much cleaner. In your curbside recycling, you might have dozens of different materials, right? And within each of those categories, you might have different types of metals and types of papers and types of plastics. So it's hard to sort and process and recycle that with 100% accuracy and success. Whereas in the bottle sorting facility, you know exactly what you're getting. So all of that can get recycled in a relatively straightforward, clean way. But we got in touch with a couple of experts who can tell you more about whether all that work, both for the processors and for the consumers, is worth the effort.
On-hand producer Ronia Kabansag. Ronia, thank you for all the footwork on this.
Yeah, thank you.
When we come back, we're going to weigh the costs and benefits.
You know, when we talk about the bottle bill, it's been around for 50 years. The world has changed in 50 years.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a moment.
I was somebody who helped dozens of cities switch to single stream recycling. I was right there with everyone who thought that it was better because the numbers at the time were showing me that we were getting more yield in terms of total material.
We talked with someone who is proudly and openly pro-bottle bill, but she says back in the day, that wasn't always the case.
My name is Susan Collins, and I am the president of the Container Recycling Institute. We are a nonprofit that has been around for 35 years, and we do research on beverage container recycling primarily. And our mission is to make North America the global model for the collection and high quality recycling of packaging materials.
Susan was a strong advocate for curbside recycling. But when she learned about what happens to curbside materials when they actually reach a sorting facility, her perspective totally changed.
My research took me farther down the line, not just at the collection point, not just at the sorting facility, but I actually went to many facilities that accepted the aluminum for recycling, the melters, to the places that accepted the PET. And I saw the complete complete mess of materials that was delivered to those facilities.
I'd like to start out by talking about some of the practical costs of the bottle bill before we talk about the benefits. What do we know about how much it costs bottle producers to take back and process returned bottles?
In Michigan, we actually don't know because it's proprietary information. It is handled between the beverage producers and their service providers. But anecdotally, we actually hear that the Michigan system is one of the lowest cost systems in the world. Some of that has to do with the material types that are prevalent in the system. Aluminum cans generate a considerable amount of revenue compared to the other material types, and they often pay for themselves in the recycling process. So we don't know, but it is likely in the range of just a penny per container or 2 pennies per container. That's the general amount.
What does research tell us about whether bottle bills make any difference in terms of beverage sales?
We were unable to find any impact on beverage container sales as a result of a new deposit or a change in the deposit. We found basically that life keeps chugging along and that people keep buying beverages in the same numbers that they do. If there was an increasing trend, it tends to continue to increase. If there was a decreasing trend, it tends to continue to decrease. We couldn't see a direct correlation in all of the data from all over the world over a 20-year period in deposits on beverage container sales.
So people keep chugging along, as it were. The most obvious benefit to recycling, I guess we could say, is the fact that bottles and cans end up where they should, instead of in a ditch or on a beach or in a landfill. What do we know about the volume of litter that's actually reduced?
So on average, statistically, in the United States, but the states that have beverage container deposit laws have 50% less beverage container litter. They have half as much beverage container litter as the other states. But even that is sort of an underestimate of the power of a beverage container deposit law, because several of the states in the United States have what I call half a deposit program, where some of the beverages are on deposit and some aren't. So obviously the impact of the program is only going to accrue to the beverages that are on deposit. So we know that the numbers would be even more than a 50% reduction in the United States if the programs in the United States were comprehensive. And indeed, we've seen 80% reduction in beverage container litter in other places in the world. And then you also mentioned the recycling piece of it. The recycling piece of it is also tremendously successful. I mean, I've been working in recycling for 35 years, and there is no other program where I can start a new program and within 2 years have a 70 or 80% recycling rate in that program. That just never happens. So I call these programs the rock stars of recycling for their effectiveness in that way, you know, that they get the highest percentage of materials actually get recycled.
With all this in mind, Susan, are there any other metrics that you think are helpful if we're trying to determine whether a bottle deposit program is doing what it's quote unquote supposed to do, or whether it's truly effective?
I would say there's 3 things that I always look for is high quantity, high quality, and low cost. And we can always strive to get a little more in all 3 of those areas. If the system is run with a spirit of continuous improvement, it can deliver efficiency and effectiveness.
So when it comes to our listeners' question, what do you think? Is our bottle bill worth the cost and effort?
It's the best thing going for recycling in Michigan. There's no other program in Michigan that has no other recycling program in Michigan that has such a high recycling rate. People trivialize beverage container recycling sometimes because the bottle itself, a single bottle, seems so small. But they don't realize that we go through 2 or 3 of those a day, every day, forever. I mean, if you're comparing that to, let's say, a container of mayonnaise, it's going to take you a couple months to get through that container of mayonnaise. You're not going to go through a couple of them every day. It's a lot. And so it is not trivial. It is definitely not trivial how many beverage containers all of us go through every year.
Susan Collins is president of the Container Recycling Institute. Susan, thank you so much for sharing some of your experience with us on this.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, so we've heard why the bottle bill is worth it to the system of waste management and recycling, but is it worth it to you? New research from the University of Michigan shows a big drop-off in returns that happened during COVID, and those return rates have not got back to where they used to be. Is 10 cents a can enough to get those containers returned anymore?
You know, when we talk about the bottle bill, it's been around for 50 years. The world has changed in 50 years. 10 cents isn't what it used to be in the 70s, let's face it.
That's Shelie Miller,
Professor in the School for Environment and Sustainability at the University of Michigan.
She co-authored a 2025 study titled A Comprehensive Evaluation of Michigan's Bottle Deposit System. The report details what updates could be made to the system and why our state saw such a drop in redemption rates during and after the pandemic.
Historically, Michigan bottle bill recycling has been fantastic. We've been the best in the nation for a long time. And then, honestly, after the pandemic, we saw a fall off in returns. And so we think there's a couple of potential reasons for that, but largely it's because people got out of the habit when recycling centers shut down. And so when recycling centers reopened again, there was just a little bit less incentive for folks to go back. And then once they got out of the habit, they said, hey, maybe I don't miss these dimes that are collecting. We still, I will say, do have really strong returns. They're just less than what they once were.
Are there common complaints that you hear among bottle producers about the system that we have right now?
One of the things we hear from retailers is that they really take the burden of a lot of the bottle deposit system. When you're talking about smaller retailers, they really don't have the space. They don't have the really great technology to have the reverse vending machines that some of the larger retailers do. And so it takes a while to stockpile enough bottles to get them returned. And then, of course, the larger retailers, they have a lot of volume coming in, they have a lot of customers coming in, and that takes up space in their back room, and space is money. And so you see a lot from the retailers wanting some shifts, but then you also see things from various aspects of the industry. When we talk about the types of bottles that are collected, back in the 70s, it was basically soda and beer. It was carbonated beverages. Now carbonated beverages are only about 55% of the total beverages sold. And so the beverage industry has shifted. And so this can be a source of frustration for both the bottlers, but also the consumers who, they might be putting cans in a recycling machine and are getting rejected because it's really confusing to know what has a deposit on it and what doesn't.
You noted that the amount per deposit is 10 cents in Michigan ever since the 1970s. And I think if we put that through the inflation grinder, that 10 cents in 1976 would be 59 cents now if adjusted for our times and the value of the currency. Do you think it would change people's recycling habits if we bumped up that deposit value? If people were maybe paying 59 cents when they bought the beverages and received 59 cents back when they brought them back?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not even sure that 59 cents is even the number that really flips, the discussion. Michigan has had one of the highest return rates because most other states have only had 5 cents, and Michigan was this 10-cent standard that was much higher than other states for a long time. 10 cents was seen as a really strong incentive. It is obviously a less, it matters a little less when we're talking about 10 cents. 59 cents, that actually has your attention a little bit more. Now, I'm not sure that anyone's really going to go for an almost 60-cent deposit, of course. But
I'm thinking about this. Like, I'm putting on my grocery shopping brain. Would we essentially be paying $6 more for a 12-pack of pop if 59 cents was the number that got used? I wonder if retailers would be okay with a price spike like that.
Well, and I mean, I think that's certainly up for debate, and that is essentially what we were doing in the 70s, right? That is why our rates were so high, our return rates were so high, because 10 cents really did matter. You really saw, drives and things that 10 cents really mattered. Even so, you see other states right now who are passing more modest laws that are not nearly, in a 60-cent range, but are seeing bumps in recycling rates, even with smaller increases in the bottle deposit. And so when you look at recycling rates, one of the most effective ways to have a strong recycling rate is have a bottle deposit law. Bottle deposit laws are shown to reduce litter because people will go and collect bottles that end up on beach lines and coastlines and, as litter places. People will do recycling drives as far as for charities and those sorts of things. And so in bulk, the dime does add up. It is an incentive for people. People are still responding to it, just not perhaps as much as they once did.
Are there other improvements to our system that came up based on the research that your team did?
Oh, yes, there's plenty to do. And I will say, even though bottle bills are, the gold standard in recycling, there's always ways to improve. One of the things that we think would certainly increase recycling rates is expanding the number of deposit-eligible containers. Another piece is something we call universal redemption. So right now, the law is structured in a way that retailers are only required to take back the bottles that they sell, the kinds of beverages they sell. And so what that means is that you cannot return one store brand to a different store. The machines will reject it. And so that can be something that would really help consumers and help sort of the overall efficiency of the system.
You mean something like a catch-all return center that might be at the waste transfer station? Or do you just mean making the ones in stores able to accept all kinds of recycling at once?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's actually both. And so one, the sort of universal redemption is that any place that takes cans should take back potentially all types of beverages that have a deposit, whether or not the retailer sells it or not. Then there's also this idea of getting back redemption centers outside of retail, especially for more rural customers or places that don't have sort of the big super centers around. It could be really beneficial to have a more centralized drop-off station. There are now improvements in those technologies where they would allow you to put an entire bag of recyclings in rather than feed them in one by one. And then it would process in bulk, and that could really save time for individual consumers feeding things in one by one.
Shelie, I'm sure you get this a lot. But have you ever seen the episode of Seinfeld where Kramer drives a truckload of cans to the state of Michigan to get that 10-cent deposit to really cash in?
Absolutely. It's the Seinfeld problem, for sure.
9,999 bottles in cans in the truck. 9,999 bottles in cans. At 10 cents a bottle and 10 cents a can. We're pulling in $500 a man.
Do you think we've lost our status as legendary bottle deposit site that might draw people from, I don't know, maybe the Toledo area to come over the Michigan state line, or maybe even hold those local can collection fundraisers?
And so it's actually, the Seinfeld problem is actually a big concern in sort of the recycling industry. It is true that only Michigan-sold cans actually get the deposit on them, and only those can actually get the deposit back. So if you purchased a beverage in Ohio, the barcode on it knows that you purchased that beverage in Ohio. And so the machines won't allow you to get a deposit back from that. So we were trying to figure out as far as, how prevalent is bottle fraud? So this entire idea of trucking empty containers or figuring out some way of scamming the system. We couldn't get good numbers on the amounts of fraud, but there are some carve-outs for fraud prevention in the system, so you don't get out-of-state bottles that never actually collected a deposit being returned.
So, at the end of the day, why do you think state lawmakers have not updated the law yet?
I think that's a great question. I think, when you talk about bottle bill, in some ways, it's just been part of Michigan's DNA for a really long time. We've had the 10-cent deposit, and honestly, it has been robust for a really long time until COVID happened. And so while we did see some fall off in recycling pre-2020, we really saw a dip after 2020. And so while certainly the system could be improved, I don't know that there was a whole lot of incentive to really repair something that wasn't fundamentally broken.
Shelie Miller is a professor in the School of Environment and Sustainability at the University of Michigan. Shelie, thank you so much.
It's been great to be here.
That's On Hand for today. I'm April Baer. If you have any Michigan questions for us, write in. You can email us. The address is onhand@michiganpublic.org. Or fill out the submission form. I'll link that in the show notes. You'll also find space in the form to submit your stories. This week, we're looking for things that might have happened to you around mile marker roads in Michigan. Spots like 8 Mile, 10 Mile, and so on. Is there one maybe in your town that marks something special or historically significant? Or maybe you have memories tied to all these classic roads in Metro Detroit. Please do write in. Once again, the address is onhand@michiganpublic.org. Today's episode was produced by Ronia Kabansag with editing from Laura Weber Davis. Other producers on the show are Mike Blank, Michelle Jokish-Polo, and April Van Buren. Our senior producer is Mercedes Mejia. Our interns are Molly Anderson, Astrid Code, and Maximilian Resch. On Hand is a production of Michigan Public. You can find out all about us at michiganpublic.org. See you next time. Bye-bye.